This meeting is now being recorded.
All right, well, good morning, everyone, and thank you all for joining us today for the webinar. This is Julie Ice from the Global Alliance, and I'll just be kicking things off today before passing off to our presenter. Just a few housekeeping items before we begin. We are recording the webinar, and we'll make the recording available on our website under our resources section. So if you know of a colleague who wasn't able to join, or if you have to leave early, or want to hear any of the webinar again, do note that the recording will be available. Also, we are going to keep everyone muted just to avoid any unwanted background noise, and we ask that you keep yourself muted if you've dialed in by phone. We will have a Q&A session at the end, so we ask that you hold your questions until then, and that you relay those through the instant messenger function, which is located at the bottom left of the screen. You can also use that to communicate with us if you're having technical difficulties with sound or something like that. And so with that, I think we can go ahead and get started. So today we'll hear from Dr. Shen, who's a researcher at Jiangsu Academy of Environmental Science, and he will provide us with an overview of the results of a systematic review of the Chinese language literature, key enablers and barriers influencing the adoption of improved stoves and clean fuels. And this review was commissioned by the Global Alliance in 2013, and it was really meant to be a supplement to an earlier review done by researchers at the University of Liverpool, which reviewed 101 studies across Asia, Africa, and Latin America to identify these key enablers and barriers influencing the adoption of improved stoves and clean fuels. And while this review is very comprehensive, the one real limitation was that it did not include a review of peer-reviewed literature in the Chinese language. And so the Alliance really felt that, given that China had conducted the world's largest cookstove program, that it was really important to capture some of the sort of learnings from that. And so that's why the Alliance commissioned this particular review. And so Dr. Shen will give us an overview of the findings from that. And then we also have two of the researchers from the University of Liverpool study here as well, Nigel and Debbi Stanistreet, who will provide their sort of comments in response to the Chinese language literature review. And then we also have Karin, who is an independent consultant and an expert on adoption of improved stoves. So with that, I think I'll hand things over to Dr. Shen, who will go ahead and give us an overview of the study. Dr. Shen?
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Julia.
Mm-hmm.
Can you hear me? Yeah?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. So I'm very glad to be here to report to you our results. This is the work that should be finished last November, but due to some reasons, we finished it this May. So first, I must apologize for the delay. Okay, my presentation today includes six parts. But I think I can go quickly about the background because most of you are very familiar with this. As just Julia mentioned that there is a wide use of solid fuels and a large consumption resulting in very serious environmental problems. So not only high air pollution in indoor but also outdoor air pollution. And also subsequently it affects human health and climate change significantly. So during the last several decades, there are many programs in the local or regional scale. Some of them succeed, but some of them failed. So therefore, we may consider that what affects the fuel adoption, and more important, what factors may affect its sustainable use. So, and we are very interested to know that what can we learn from those published papers. So this is the general background of the research. So as just mentioned, that was a very good job. We call it a global review. This is the work done by the colleges from the Liverpool. So I'm glad to see some colleges from Liverpool are also here in today's webinar. They identified several key factors, and very important. We note that some studies in English in China and published in English was also included in their review, but it also noted that some literatures in Chinese was not included. Therefore, the GACC in the earlier 2013, they decided to support a study. The study is this study. Mainly focus on the results from the Chinese evidence. So the main objective of present study is to identify key factors affecting the deployment and system use of clean fuels and cookstoves in China, based on literature research in China. So this is the background. About the method, so to keep consistent, we adopt the research method from the previous global review, which means, but we note that the translation in Chinese is not simply a matter of seeking words, but of finding terms that is commonly and frequently used in Chinese. We 5 databases are used in our search, and among them, first 3, CNKI, Guofeng, and VIP, are the 3 largest databases in China. So most of the papers are from these 3 databases. This table shows the keywords that we used in our literature search. You can find that not only the fuels, but also some words like adoption, uptake, deliver, switch are used. When we do our literature research, we only include those peer-reviewed papers or reports, which means that some comments or letters on newspapers are not included in this study. And we keep in mind that all of the papers included should focus on the clean fuel or clean stove uptake and system use. These papers should clearly in its aims and objective, and well done in its quality control, which means it should be have adequate description of the content, and also appreciate the study of its method, including sampling, how they did the data collection and how they did the analysis. The studies or the papers are classified into 3 types: qualitative studies and quantitative studies, and also case studies. So generally, over 47,000 studies was first found from the database, but we note that according to its titles or keywords, a large number of studies are not focus on the factors affecting the fuel adoption or cookstove adoption. So we have 930 articles selected for the abstract review. When we read the abstracts, we then find that there are about 350 papers that need to be read in full text and to assess its quality. After a quality assessment, a final, we include 87 full papers. This 87 full text was assessed in in-depth review. Among these 87 papers, there are 20 quantitative studies and 23 qualitative studies, and the other 44 are our case or policy analysis. These studies, we found that there are only 3 papers. They report or analyze the factors affecting the influence of improved stoves. All the other papers analyze the factors affecting adoption and system use of fuel. And we note that there are 48% papers, that is 42 papers, report the change of residential energy consumption instead of a specific fuel like electricity or biogas. What I mean the residential energy consumption here is that the paper mainly report the percent or proportion of traditional solid fuels to the cleaner ones. I will also mention this later in the next section of this presentation. Think about the spatial distribution among the 87 papers include there are 20 studies report a general situation of the whole national, or even if they did the data analysis, the data are from the national statistical data. So we may realize that these 20 studies, in these 20 studies, the provisional variations can hardly be addressed. But as we know, in China there are over 23 or 24 provinces. So for each province, there are no more than 5 studies, except Jiangsu and Shaanxi. Jiangsu is in the east of China, and Shanxi is in the middle of China. These 2 provinces there are about 10 studies in these 2 provinces. But for the others, only a small number of 3 or 4 studies. So we realized that the representation and the generalization of these results should be in care. Also, I will mention this later. So if we think about the quantitative analysis, there are much smaller number of studies. If for each province, maybe only 1 or 2 studies, they report quantitative results. So let's go to the main part. So the first part is about the factors affecting the cookstove uptake. In the previous global review, factors affecting the clean fuels or stove uptake was identified in 7 domains of household and heating, knowledge and hospitality, fuel and technology, financial, tax, subsidy, market development, regulations, and also police. So in our review, if we used a comparable or similar classification system, which means if the same or similar factors were also addressed in Chinese papers, we are classified into this section. The development of Chinese cookstoves can usually be classified into 4 stages. The first stage, we call it the initial stage, is that before the 1980s. In most of the stoves used are traditional older ones or very simple ones, and the thermal efficiency of these stoves are usually around 10% or even less. After that, during the 1980s to mid-1990s, we call it the improvement and development stage. The world-famous NIST program is in this period. During this period, there are some fuel-saving stoves with a short distance between the pot and the bottom, and with chimney. So the thermal efficiency of this type of the stoves during this stage are usually around 20% higher than the traditional older ones. After that, from the later 1990s to the early 2005, we call it the technology innovation stage. It means in this stage, some new stoves like gasification stoves or high efficiency, low emission stoves come into use. What is a high efficiency, low emission stove? And we have a definition, and I will show you later. So after the 2005 to now, we call it the accelerated development stage of cookstove in China. In fact, after 2005, there are many international cooperation and CDM programs in China, and also there is a rapid increase of stove factories and companies. So we call this is an accelerated development stage. And I mentioned what is a high efficient low emission stove. In China, we define it that first, the thermal efficiency for this stove should be higher than 35, 60, or 65% for cooking and heating stove. The second part is about pollutant emission. It's the smoke, SO2, NO2 emission should be less than 50 micrograms per cubic meters and 150 micrograms per cubic meters. And also the CO emissions should be less than 0.2%. So these stoves are called high efficient, low emission stoves in Chinese. Recently, there is a new standard in draft. It was a new standard for clean biomass cookstoves. In this standard, summary stations and pollutant emissions are considered. According to the summary stations, the stoves was classified into 3 tiers. If the summary stations is lower than 35%, between 35 to 40%, and higher than 40%. And for pollutant emissions, PM 2.5 and CO was considered. As we can see that in the high efficient low emission stoves, we consider smoke, not PM 2.5, and we consider the SO2, NO2, and CO. But in this clean biomass cookstoves, only PM 2.5 and CO was considered. One important reason is that we think that NOx emission from the biomass cookstoves may be much less or small, or the inflows are much smaller compared to CO and PM 2.5. So thinking about factors affecting the cookstove uptake, as one paper that was by Karin in 1998, they said that in the later 1990s, the deployment of improved stoves achieved very slow progress. The main reason is that most of the stove adoption programs mainly focus on the summary stations instead of its practice. They found that in the field, some stoves have main problems, like first, the stove doors are very small, so only small varnishes or straws can be inserted. And they found the chamber are very small. It means during the cooking time, the cookers cannot leave. He or she must stay aside the stove to keep feeding. And the third question is that the flue time sometimes may stick down, so it required a clean maintenance. And also, for some stoves, they come on only one pot. That means they can only be used for cooking food, but not can be boil the water together. So after that, there are some improvement. They maybe change the grit at the pot and optimize the design between the chamber and the door. So some stoves are more practical. Reported by Guo in 2001, they said that most of the stoves used in rural areas are built by the residents themselves. So the quality of the stoves highly depends on the experience of the residents. And for some stoves in the market, because of the lacking of the technical specs, there are many low-quality stoves in use. A field study in Shen reported that key enablers affecting the cookstove uptake include the fuel technology, the optimization and system supply of stoves, and also stove accessories, and also the support from the local government. Another study from Henan, it found that the deployment and use of improved stoves are sometimes out of order. Because of the lack of the technical specs and no standardization management, most residents have no idea about the improved stoves. They do not have idea, or there was no awareness of environmental protection and energy saving. So the use of these improved stoves are not satisfied. Therefore, so consider about the factors affecting cookstove uptake. And the first is our stove technology. For the commercial ones, it should be good for efficient burning, but for the self-built ones, the quality affects the adoption and system use of severely. The second is the policy and standards. The development of regulations and standards is essential for the effective deployment, particularly the later. And to ensure the quality of the stove, some standards are necessary. The third factor is the market development. As identified in one study, the development of market, not only the stove itself, but also the stove accessories should be a development so that to ensure the sustainable use. The fourth factors is the tax and financial supports. So either because of the commercial stoves or self-built stoves, they all require additional costs. And if the adoption can be supported financially, the residents will be more willing to use the deployed new stocks. The five factors is the knowledge and participation. It's realized that the adoption can save fuels and benefit the environment, and also the awareness of energy saving will increase the passion to adopt the new stocks. The sixth and the most widely mentioned is the demonstration and management. The emphasis and encouragement from the local government and also some NGO organizations can increase the passion in most residents' adoption behavior. And also, if there are some demonstration from the others, they can also increase the adoption willing. So, in a brief summary, we can find 6 dominant factors affect the stove uptake. When compared to our previous, to the previous global review, they found that the influence of household and city wasn't really mentioned in Chinese literature. But personally, I think this did not mean the household and city is not important factors. It was just not considered so far in the present Chinese papers. It also affects the stove uptake. Okay, therefore, the next section I'd like to report some results from the factors affecting the clean fuel adoption. As I mentioned earlier, in most Chinese papers, the papers report the change of household energy consumption structures, which showing the percent of traditional solid fuels over the cleaner fuels. So they may report how the factors affect the change of the percent instead of specific fuel. Among these studies, there are 15 policy analyses, 40 quantitative analyses, and the other and about 13 quantitative analyses. Also, similar to that in the global review results, we can also find 7 domains of factors affecting the clean fuel adoption. The first is the household capitalization. And in the household capitalization, the first factor is the household structures and area. What I mean house structures here, the study from 9 provinces showed that in compared to the family living in a house of brick wood structures, those who live in the current structures may prefer to use the cleaner and new fuels. And another study in Western Hunan province also showed that in the families lived in the adobe structures, firewood is the main household energy, but in the concrete structures, LPG contribute over 48% of the family energy consumption. Also, about the house areas, a study found that with 1 square meter increase of house area, the chance of clean fuel adoption will increase by 0.01%, even with more positive. To a great extent, the difference in house structures is associated with the family income. So with the increase of family incomes, it's think that more and more residents will be overheard, and in some new house, some modern stoves and electricity equipment will be used. Therefore, the consumption of new fuels and cleaner fuels like electricity or gas was used. The second factor in the household capitalization is the location. The influence of house location is the main reason for the availability and accessibility of the fuels. In most remote areas, firewood are largely used, while the other fuels are really not so often used because it's a high price and the difficulty in transport. The third factors in the household capitalization is family income. The influence of house income is significant. Generally, the adoption of clean fuels will increase with the increase of house income. But we note that the relationship between biogas use and the house income is nonlinear. I will talk about this in more detail in the next section. In the analysis of family income, there are 3 or 5 studies used quantitative analysis. They used the ES models, which means briefly it calculated the beta value of different fuels. What is a beta? If a beta can be used to show how the residents will arrange their income on different fuels after the basic consumption need was met. Briefly, a low beta indicated a high tendency to adopt the fuel. So they used the data from Jiangsu and Ningxia 2 provinces in China. The results showed that the beta of coal is usually negative, and the beta of clean fuels like gas and electricity was generally lower than that for coal and for biomass fuels. As I mentioned, a low beta values means that there is a high tendency to adopt clean fuels. And when we realized that the household energy consumption structure may not change immediately after the increase of house income, especially in some low-income households. With more, when the house income increased, the priority choice of most rural residents is not to change their fuels in their daily lives, but only when the house income increased significantly, sometimes higher than critical values, they may consider to adopt new fuels for their daily lives. This is a slide shows new results from the first Chinese environmental exposure related health human activity pattern survey. The study showed clearly that over the last 2 decades in China, the non-solid fuel users increased from only 15% in 1991 to about 60% in 2011. And in a national scale, we found a positive correlations between gas users and the national income per capita, and a negative relationship between the solid fuel use and the national income, not only in a national scale, as shown in the bottom two figures. Also in the provincial levels, we also find a positive relationship between the gas and the GDP per capita in each province, and a negative relationship between the solid fuel use and the GDP. This is another evidence showing the influence of income on fuel adoption. The 4 factors in the household calculation is the family size, gender, and age. Generally, we found that the old may be preferred to use the traditional solid fuels, which means the young are more willing to use clean fuels. For usually, with a large family size, which means there would be more levers for the development of new clean fuels like biogas. And usually, the female are more willing to change to clean, high-quality fuels compared to the male. It's maybe more or less because the female are usually conducted the cooking activities. The second domain of the factors is the knowledge and expectation. A further survey in Fujian province, Fujian is located in the south of China, showed that local residents are willing to adopt clean fuels, but in fact they have little, they know very little about these fuels. So it's very necessary to increase their knowledge or participation before clean fuel adoption programs. Your education level is an important factor affecting the knowledge and participation. In general, people with higher education levels may prefer to use clean fuels and reduce the consumption of traditional solid fuels. The study showed that with 1 year education they will increase the chance of clean fuel adoption will increase by about 0.7%. The third domain of the clean fuel adoption is the fuel technology. What is the fuel technology here? Not only includes the fuel supply, but also the price and the convenience, and also its impact on quality in use. So generally, there should be low cost in priority, and also this fuel should be convenience in use, and also maybe benefits in key factors. The fourth domain is the financial and tax or subsidy. It's clearly that with the financial support from the local government, the deployment can be developed effectively. In fact, the practice in many rural areas showed that the programs of national debt, public grants, or loan from World Bank is the rapid development of clean fuels. The fifth domain is the regulations. In fact, the central government and previously in China issued a series of regulations, but it's urgently required to make more detailed rules in the local area, and these rules, detailed ones, should be different in different areas. So far, there are over 70 stands covering the area stove design, the production of clean fuels. But we think it's also a smaller number because some of them are not practical. Some of them are old and need to be updated. More important, it's our concern that who and how to implement these stands in practice. The sixth domain is the market development. As shown that now in China, there are more than 5,600 companies, and there are hundreds of factors producing the new stoves and all this. So when we realized that the market of stoves has been developed, the market of stoves, of fuels, are really development. The seventh domain is the management and the publicity and demonstration. Without any doubt, the deployment of clean fuels, especially new ones, should be under the strong support of the local governments. It's important and effective to get the publicity of clean fuels, and the adoption would be promoted after the demonstration of from around. Through the publicity and the demonstration, the residents would have a deep understanding of the new fuel and the potential benefits. Increase the knowledge and the perception of fuel saving through the publicity and the demonstration. Increase the passion and enthusiasm. So, in summary, so we also find 7 domains that can be affect the clean fuel use. And then before different from the global review, and before we go to the conclusion, I hope to specifically focus on the biofuel use. Why we specifically focus on biofuel? Because in China, the yields of cookstoves and woods are over 600 megatons and 900 megatons per year. There is a higher, so such high consumption resulting very significant impacts on human quality. Generally, 3 ways can be considered in the high efficient use of biogas. First is biogas. By 2005, there are over 1.5 million households using biogas, and the yield of biogas was about 7 billion per cubic meters per year. Among the 87 papers we included in analyze, there are 35 studies analyzed or report factors affecting the biogas development. These factors can also classified into 6 domains. First is the household condition, is the house location. It showed that in the areas with 7 to 12 months having an average temperature higher than 10 degrees is good for the development of biogas. But in the areas that was only 6 months with a high temperature higher than 10 degrees, but also having abundant solar energies, also can be developed biogas. And for the other areas, it may be not suitable to the development biogas fuels. The second is the house income. As I noted that the relationship between the house income and the biogas use is usually non-linear, which means for the low-income households, they may change the fuels to biogas, when with the increase of their income, they may tend to use other cleaner fuels like LPG because the biogas maybe have a problem like gas supply, the maintenance of poor, and also the relatively short use of biogas. Family size, age, and genders also should significant impact on the biogas use. The second domain is the knowledge and precipitation. Usually similar to that for the knowledge or awareness of biogas to some extent is related to the education level, as I mentioned before. The third is the fuel technology, which means the quality of biogas, the supply of gas, but also its raw fuels, and also the quality of the biogas generation tools can also affect the adoption and system use of biogas. The fourth domain is the tax and subsidy. The financial support from the local government is important to increase the development of biogas. There is a very successful programs in Sichuan. They showed that even after the adoption, there are over 90% of households still use the biogas. But a study found that the external funds was negatively correlated with the adoption value, which means that most residents are not ready to afford the national debt just because of fuel use. So to increase or to promote the development of biogas, it's necessary to keep in mind that the financial support should be in the forms of special funds or subsidies instead of debt. The fifth domain is planning and police. Also, this is very important. Just again quickly. The sixth domain is the management and the publicity and the demonstration. Only under the absence from the local government, the financial support, the professional teams, and also market can be available. And also after the publicity and the demonstration, it will increase the confidence and increase the adoption passions in clean fuel change. So there are also 6 domain factors affect the biogas use. The second way of high efficient biofuel use is the straw gasification. In fact, the efficiency of direct burning straws is only 15 to 20%, but the efficiency of straw gasification can be high as 35%. So during the 1990s, there are more than 1,000 gasification stations built. So factors affecting the straw gasification include first gas quality, the second financial support, the third market development, the fourth regulation and standards, and the 5 the management, means the local management. The third way to high efficiency use biogas fuels is the compressed biofuels. Compressed biofuels in the forms of briquettes or pellets are important ways of biomass use, and it's rising more and more attention recently. So there are benefits that it's easier for transport and also high burning efficiency. But we realize that these new fuels are very, very new. There are very little studies so far, not only emission studies, but also various little studies focus on the factors affecting its adoption. They only found 3 papers that analyzed the situation, problems, and also countermeasures about the pellets development in China. This is a study by ourselves. We measured its emission factors and calculated the emission reduction. We can find a significant emission reduction in most air pollutants from the pellets burning compared to the traditional fuels. Factors affect the compressed biofuels include house income, knowledge and precipitation, fuel technology. Here, the fuel technology means conclude the first is the supply of raw materials, the production of these pellets, and also its price. The fourth factor is the police support, and then also very important, as we all know, is the tax and the subsidy from the local government. And the last one is the management, which means the emphasis from the local government and the leaders. Just to go to the conclusion, we can find that there are over 26 factors in 7 aspects. These factors were more or less mentioned in the global review. If you want to know what is different or is there any special factors in Chinese papers, I may say that in many papers mentioned that the role of local government, the emphasis of the local government is important to promote the clean fuel adoption. Personally, I think that this is not only in China but also in other countries. It's very important to get support from the policymakers and get support from local government. This is the results from the first Chinese environmental exposure-related human activity survey. So we found that, in fact, with a very rapid increase in China, solid foods are still the main energy used in China. We can say that for cooking, there are about 30% and 10% households use biomass and coals for cooking. And for heating, there are over 50% of families and 12% families use coal or biomass to heating. So we still have a very large number of people use these solid foods. We have many works to do. So I just listed some of them. First, we realized about the factors. We studied on the factors affecting the adoption and evaluation of these factors. In fact, even though we found the 26 factors, we don't know how related the importance of them. So it's necessary in future to conduct more quantitative studies. And the second is that the spatial and temporal variations of different foods was unclear. As I mentioned, there are over 23 or 24 provinces in China. The situations is different in different areas. And the last also very important one is that there are very limited real measurements, not only which conduct more work not only in pollutant emissions but also on the thermal efficiencies and field measurements on the household air pollution, so that we can know more about the influence of these solid foods and how it would be changed after the adoption of new foods. In final, I'd like to thank to the GACC, Sumi and Jisong to provide me this opportunity to conduct a study. Also the team members and Professor Tao Yang and Gongjing Liu for their kind suggestion and comments. And I'd like to thank you all very much. You can find my email and some text email. If I go very quickly or very fast, you do not show any. You do not listen well, you can email me later. Okay, thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Dr. Shen. Lots of really interesting findings and insights there. At this time, I'd like to go ahead and invite our researchers from the University of Liverpool who did the global overview of adoption to provide some initial sort of comments and reactions to what Dr. Shen has presented. So I'm going to go ahead and unmute Nigel and Debbi Stanistreet from University of Liverpool so they can provide their comments.
Okay, thank you very much. It's Nigel Bruce speaking here. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we haven't got too long left, so I'll keep this relatively brief. Well, thank you very much indeed, Dr. Shen, for the presentation. Having read the report, I think you did a very comprehensive job. I certainly enjoyed reading this report, and it was very good to see this comprehensive review of the Chinese literature. I'd like to compliment you and your team on the thorough approach to this. It's reflected in the methods you've used. Although there are some areas I think it's worth commenting on where some additional details may help, and I'll come to that. And it's good to see the way you've covered fuels such as biogas, which is used extensively in China, and some of these other forms of biofuel. If it's okay, I'll just go through some comments, and then there's a couple of points where I was going to ask specifically for a response, but I'll keep this relatively brief. Is that okay?
Yes, that sounds great.
That's okay as a plan.
Okay, great.
One of the things I felt it would be helpful is, although you did give us the criteria for eligible studies. It's a bit unclear, and this does come out in the annex where you list all the studies. Which ones are actually based on sort of primary empirical data around interventions, as opposed to, or even for case studies too, whether they had components of primary empirical data. And this does come out rather in the commentary, where it's sometimes difficult to know whether the findings you report are truly findings, or whether they're interpretation and implications based on a more general discussion. So I think that would be helpful. The other thing is, and we were very aware of this in the review that we carried out, was the issue of the quality of the studies, and to record a bit more about, say a bit more about the quality of the studies, but most of all the implications of that. Now I think you do touch on that when you talk about trying to prioritize and so on and so forth, but it is an important issue. I would like to highlight, I think there are some interesting new findings here. I was going to actually ask you about that, but you answered our question, emphasizing the importance of local government, which was interesting. I think you report some very interesting new findings. For instance, on these findings on the marginal propensity to consume, the issue of the relationship with income for biogas and so on. But as I'm sure you and other readers will be very aware, because you point this out, that these are of course context dependent, so it does raise questions about generalizability of the specific findings, but in terms of approaches to analysis, there's a lot of sound on the line. You still okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, it's clear. And so it's sort of more in sort of conclusion and wrapping up. I think the review, apart from those additional specific things we've touched on briefly, I think generally confirms the finding of the global review, which is kind of reassuring, really, and it brings together a stronger body of evidence. I think this issue of trying to understand how common and consistently reported the findings are, and this question of where we think we've got findings which are based on good empirical evidence versus more in sort of interpretation. I think it's important that it was a problem certainly for us in our review, but I think if we could have a clearer idea of the empirical basis and the quality of the studies, it may help a bit. But I suppose the most important sort of issue, and I'd like to ask you to respond to, is what do you feel is the next step in a practical way? You certainly list some research issues which we certainly would support those. But in terms of your findings now allied to the findings from the global review, what do you think would be the next sort of the practical steps we could take in terms of putting all this knowledge into practice, based on what you've found and reported?
Okay, for me, I think as I mentioned, when we try to do the iterative search, really worried. So for me, I think it's possible. We needed to do some further studies or surveys ourselves to confirm the influence some factors, and it's possible. And I know there are some soil intervention programs in China. If we can conduct some work before and after that, and show or to evaluate it really affect the sustainable use, it may be interesting. So this is my thoughts.
I mean, I absolutely support those points, and I'm particularly looking at the factors that impacting on more sustained use. There's no question. I mean, I just wanted really sort of put back into the discussion the sort of conclusion that we came to after kind of a lot of thinking about this, which was that we do have this kind of wide range of factors that appear to be important. They're important.
Yeah.
Undoubtedly depends on context and the type of intervention or the fuel or the, as you said, time and spatial things. But the idea of trying to compile this learning, if you like, in some kind of tool or guide that would allow us to, in any given situation, to assess the the status and the importance of these, particular factors. So, for example, if you were, if you were working in an area and you wanted to assess the that something like income or education or people's particular cooking or heating needs are important, just to take examples. So this tool would help, assess the status of those issues, or it may be, after sales support, whatever it is. And then with that knowledge, to determine what would be the most, kind of important areas of policy and activity to strengthen. And I just, wonder whether you felt that was a valid suggestion, really, given the thinking that you must have done about this.
Yeah, I strongly agree with you. In fact, in the next month, we'll have a meeting on the research plan in the Chinese. So I will mention this and try to suggest they support this research.
With the interest of time, I'll finish there, so we can continue the discussion.
Okay, thank you, Dave.
Yes, great. Thank you very much. And Debbie, I don't know if you wanted to add any additional comments or not. Okay. And then we also have Karin here, who's an independent consultant, and wanted to allow her to provide any comments as well.
Well, yes. First of all, I think it's great to have this study that shows us a little bit of the Chinese program from the inside, and it's really been great, and I think it's well done. Then I congratulate the team for their effort. And I agree completely with Nigel. I think that he covered almost all what I was thinking, and it will be very interesting to see in more detail the quality factors of the studies that I think that need to be addressed. And well, I had two things that really I think that are very interesting from the reading of the project. One was that the predominance of the biogas in the studies, and for me it was surprising because biogas needs so many different factors to really be able to succeed. And it was interesting to see that almost 2 million homes are now cooking with biogas in China. Then that was very interesting. And what I think is that what I would have, for me it was interesting to see that you say that one of the main factors for moving from one food to another or from one technology to another was an economic factor, that the main influence was at the income level, that it will be the reason to use LPG or electricity or biomass or biogas or whatever. Then it is interesting, and I would like to see more details about the stocking, and if you have found that people is still using different technologies at the same time, as we have seen in different parts of the world. And it will be very interesting to know more about more details about the adoption, how it's done, what happened with the other functions that usually are fulfilled by the open fire, like heating, space, and that kind of thing. That what is going on. I suppose that you didn't find that information in the studies, and then I think that would be a very important line of research, that to really understand a little bit more about the different aspects of the not just the cooking, but the different aspects that are sometimes done by the technologies.
Yeah. Maybe they should have a deep analysis about these papers, but I think what we should keep in mind is that this, as I mentioned, some factors were not mentioned, did not meet, not included. It's just it was not discussed in these Chinese papers, but it really affected the adoption. So, as I just talked, maybe the next week we can do some further research ourselves to especially focus on some factors.
Yes, true.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm going to... Sorry, let's see if we can just unmute Debbi here real quick. Debbi, can you try to speak now?
She cannot.
Sorry?
Is Debbi on there?
Seems like
I know a couple of things that she wanted to. Can you hear me, Nigel? Here.
Yes, we can.
Couple of things.
We
can hear you. Yeah.
I did want to mention was I mean, she has a particular interest in the valuable contributions from qualitative research, and was interested to, because you didn't really identify particularly the findings from the qualitative studies, and would be interested to learn a bit more about what they contributed, what particularly you learned from the qualitative research, as well as how useful that was. I think another thing is also where you present whether factors had a positive or negative effect. I think we sort of came to the conclusion that most factors could operate either as positive or negative, depending on how they were, which direction they went, as it were. So high income might be enabling, but obviously poverty was a barrier. So they operate more on a spectrum. But we kind of assumed that you'd reported it as it was in the literature. In other words, if a factor was really reported only in a positive sense, you recorded that. So that was another point. But I also wanted to just pick up on something Karin was saying, and then you were saying about this does come back to knowing a bit more about what information these studies collected and their quality, because if we take this issue of income, it's a very good case in point, because it's very easy to say, well, it's just a question of, income is extremely important. I appreciate the point you make about higher incomes people tend to sort of turn their backs on biogas, but they'll go to other clean fuels. So it's very easy to think, income's really important, and what can we do about that? But of course, income is associated with many other things, and one of those interesting things that we learnt about was that the value people place on time as they engage with the employment in the labour market, and so that whereas in poorer rural areas where, for instance, the time of women especially was very undervalued, saving time with more efficient and cleaner and better fuels and technologies wasn't really particularly valued. It wasn't really a driver. Whereas, as people started to engage with employment in the labour market, saving time and being efficient became extremely important. And of course, that is also, associated with income. And I think unless studies, we know whether the studies have looked at these different issues and the relationship, it's kind of easy to jump to conclusions about one factor being important without realising actually the explanation lies elsewhere, at least partly. So I would support you in strengthening that aspect of the research.
Okay, great. Thank you again, Dr. Shen, and thank you to Nigel Bruce and Karin Tronoco for your valuable comments. sorry that we were not able to get Debbi on the audio. So right now, I guess we can go ahead and open it to any general questions that people may have. Again, we ask that you enter those via the public chat function at the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. So if you have a question, please enter it now.
Okay, thank you, Julia.
Yep. So we'll just wait another minute or so to see if we have questions. Okay, we have one question for Dr. Shen, and they're asking how prevalent is the use of cookstoves in China for cooking animal food? So, Dr. Shen, do you have an idea of that?
I have no exact data, but I think they are much less now. Especially there are less and less animals in rural families these days.
Right. Okay. So less than maybe before, but still.
Maybe only in some remote areas. Yeah.
Great. And then we have a comment. Just that the issue of stoves for heating merits more emphasis. And I think that was something that Karin was getting at as well, is that in China you find that people have multiple stoves and they have, the cooking as well as the heating needs. And Dr. Shen agrees.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's very important in China. And we have another question on standards. Oh, sorry, they're really coming in. Question on what is the relationship between the standards that you, Dr. Shen, presented on and the ISO process? Might be a tough one.
Oh.
Do you have an idea of that, sort of what is the relationship between, the standards that you were speaking about and the international process via ISO that's going on? Do you care to comment on that, or maybe Jichong? Or Rainey?
I'm looking at it. Yeah.
Sure.
And the studies national local programs, and no. And there was a relationship between the stands and the ISO process. Okay, what I understand here is just the stands of some China or provincial stands. It was not related to the ISO.
So this is Ji Chongwu from the line,
yeah.
And I'm managing our China activities. I can just chime in real quick. So as Dana or someone else, you may know, we're leading the ISO standard process here at the line. So maybe later, I'm not sure if our colleague Rainey Chen, who's the lead for this process, is on the line. But after the call, definitely we can connect you with Rainey to provide you the updates on the ISO process. So on China specifically, as far as I know, in China they have sort of couple layer of standards, like at the provincial level or at the industry level or at the sector level, etc. But so far there's no national standard for clean cook stoves. But I know there are some of efforts either within the Ministry of Agriculture or there's a current project led by the World Bank, convened a lot of experts in this, trying to come up with some Chinese clean cook stoves national standards.
Great, thank you, Jichong. Okay, it looks like we had another question, but it was answered by Dr. Shen. So I'm going to just ask if any of the studies discuss specific national or local policy programs of supporting biogas use, and Dr. Shen answered that no, they did not. Okay, so we're a bit over time, but we'll wait just a few more minutes to see if we have any other questions. Okay, we have sort of a question about the cost of stoves in China. Asking about any cost information is useful. Chinese stoves seem to be heavier than the ones in tropical countries like sometimes used.
I have no idea about the stove cost.
Okay. Actually, I mean, comment on that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
But if you're interested, I will try to find out personally. I may ask some staff from the companies about this.
Sure. And just for those who are interested in China, Qichong Lu and I have been working on a China market assessment over the past year with the Ministry of Agriculture in China, and that will be released in November. So that should, we did a survey of 3,600 households, as well as surveys with manufacturers and distributors. So if you're interested in learning more about the Chinese market, that should include a lot of really useful information, including some on stove pricing. Stay tuned for that.
Okay.
Yeah. That'll be released in November. Okay. I'm not seeing any more questions. We have one more. Have you found any studies that look at a relationship between outdoor ambient air quality and adoption of cleaner fuels or stoves?
There is one or two studies in Chinese, but it's not on the outdoor air quality. It's focused on the indoor air quality before and after the stove adoption programs. Because this study is mainly focused on the factors affecting the fuel and stove adoption, so these two studies were not included in the current analysis.
Okay. Another question. If there is no provincial-wide or national program for biomass use, what are the drivers beyond its current use? Marketing?
Maybe.
Maybe, yeah. And I think that the Chinese government is actually planning to have another national stoves program. At least we're hoping so, and that's something that we're working with them on. But as far as I understand, there is still a market for improved stoves, and there are many current provincial level programs already, actually, that provide some subsidies for these stoves. And Dr. Shen adds that for biogas, there was a national program during the early 1990s. And just adding that during the National Biogas Program, the results varied in different provinces. For example, in Sichuan, many are still in use, but in rural Jiangsu, many are not in use. Okay, I think with that, if there are no more questions, we'll go ahead and close. Thank you again to Dr. Shen, as well as Nigel, Bruce, and Debbi. Sorry again that we were not able to get you on audio from the University of Liverpool, as well as Karin Tronoco for your very valuable comments. And so with that, I think we'll go ahead and close. And thank you all for joining today. We hope you found this useful. And we included a link to the report in the original webinar invite, so please go ahead and refer to that, and then we'll also make this recording available on our website. All right, thank you to all, and have a great day.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Have a good day.
Thanks, you too.
Okay, you can also send me email if you have any questions, or what can I do, whatever.
Yes, great. Thank you, Dr. Shen.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.